Hey y'all, I kind of loved filming right here. I feel like I can get nice and comfortable in my chair with a blanket. I'm not sitting on the hardwood floor. So we're doing it again, but I'm back and I have more of your paranormal stories that I'm so nervous to read. I'm looking at them right now. Time to scare myself. This first story says, my pet demon. Hi Court, my name's Marie and I've been a follower for about 6 years now. I love listening to your videos and other scary / unexplainable encounters. I've decided to share one of my very real demon encounters from when I was about 2 or 3 years old, so 2009, 2010. Starting off with some background, my parents had me very young, about 18. They decided around 19 to 20 years old of age to move out on their own, meaning I was about 2 years old. We moved into a shared home in our downtown neighborhoods, which are very historical and old, dating back to 1794. This shared home was a 2-story, so one renter occupied the downstairs and the other occupied the upstairs. My parents and I moved into the 2nd story while the other family rented the downstairs. I don't really remember much from this time besides playing outside with my dad and looking around the other renter's kitchen when I wasn't supposed to. Most of this story is going to be coming from the point of view of my family and the stories they have told me from this time. Soon after renting the 2nd story, we moved into the 1st story. My dad told me families during this time would move into the 2nd story and suddenly move back out with no explanation. Nobody wanted to stay on that 2nd story for reasons that are still unknown to me, but I have my suspicions. My mom started to notice weird behaviors in me during this time. For example, she said she would find me talking to Joe, who she assumed was an imaginary friend. It started with me just sitting in corners having full conversations with nobody, buckling him in the car, and even introducing him to my mom's friends and family. My family thought it was odd, but just assumed I was an off child. But that thought all changed when one night I was playing in my grandma's, my mom's mom, basement with my mom's old phone. My mom was watching the videos back that I had taken that night in the basement, just laughing and thinking they were cute. But in one of the videos, there is a long, black, tall shadow standing behind me on the white wall. Throughout the video, you can't hear anyone else down there with me, and my mom even said everyone was upstairs when this video was taken. Whose shadow was this? It really started to freak my family out after my mom started telling and showing everyone the video. After this video, the playing with Joe started to get really overwhelming. I was apparently always playing with this friend named Joe. I wouldn't play with other kids or family because I just wanted to play with Joe. I had no other siblings at the time as well. Soon my parents moved out of that home into my childhood home. While they were cleaning the house out, my dad found a newspaper dated back to years and years before we moved in about a man named Dr. Joe who had hung himself in the attic of that very home. My whole family was so freaked out from this, but after moving, I really have no recollection of seeing Joe or having any more problems with him. I do have a few more scary stories not related to this if anyone wants to hear more. Thank you for reading and I love you. And I want to hear more. I would love to hear more. That's horrific. Like, Joe, leave the kids alone, but also really sad, like the circumstances, but scary nonetheless. Joe, back off. This next story says, welcome to the new house. Hi Courtney and all, long-time viewer from Australia. This is going to be a short story, long situation, so please bear with me. For a bit of context, I, 20 female, moved houses with my parents roughly 6 months ago to just outside the small country town we already resided in. We bought a small farm so we could run our business and keep our trucks whilst living on the land in a freshly renovated house. From my bedroom window, you can see the backyard and the maid shed, which can be a thoroughfare during the day with workers and occasionally customers milling about and coming to pick things up. One day, a few months ago, I had finished work and was sitting in my room, noise-canceling headphones on and watching a video. Everyone had gone home for the day and I was the only person home with our 3 dogs. Both parents had headed into town for a meeting. Suddenly, I hear this blood-curdling scream of a woman. It was not the video. I even went back and checked. I jumped out of bed and ripped my blinds open and see no one at the shed. So I investigate further and go for a walk around part of our property. Usually I'm very sensible. I would not be the first to die in a horror film, but this truly sounded like somebody was in trouble. Fortunately and unfortunately, I find no one. A little freaked out and very confused, I head back to the house and mention nothing of it. Around 2 weeks later, my mom had come home from work in town and asked if I had been outside. I said, no, I've been in my room reading. I didn't even know you were home. Why is that? She tells me she saw a pair of long legs walk outside across the length of our lounge room windows, which take up most of the wall, about 6 meters. However, we had the blinds half down to keep the evening sun out, so who knows if it was a full body. I'm not really keen to find out, so again, a little freaked out. We mentioned nothing of it. A few weeks later, Mom and I are in the backyard doing some gardening when I hear another scream. I whipped my head around to see two of our dogs also looking in the same direction. Mom is mostly deaf, so she heard nothing but saw my expression and asked if I was okay. I know all the sounds of the native birds and animals in the area, and this was nothing like an animal. The closest I can compare it to is a screaming fox, but it was too human-like and sounded both far away but insanely close, almost right next to me at the same time. I really can't explain it. Very freaked out this time, I ignore it, a little relieved in the fact that I'm not going insane because my dogs heard it too. 4 days ago, I was in the kitchen baking. We have two massive windows that look out our front yard, right next to our door. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a figure walk across both windows. Thinking it's my dad coming in for coffee, I wait for the door to unlock, but nothing. So I peek outside and there was no one, not even our workers. I check the Ring doorbell and see nothing, which means the figure must have been inside. The only reason that the house could be haunted is either A, my grandparents, rest in peace, or B, the land would have been very busy back in the day for transporting livestock, and the possibilities of a shepherd dying out here are quite high. Also, our dogs always stare at corners, constantly, and are always on guard. Sorry if this is long, these are just a few experiences we've had after a few months at this house. I would want to move. I would want to move stat. Do you have any other stories? Because now you've been living there a little bit longer. I think this story was submitted, the story was submitted almost a month ago. Has anything else happened in that month? I need to know. I think the screaming has to be the scariest part of that, because if I heard somebody screaming bloody murder and there was nobody there, what are you screaming at? What happened to you? Because you know they're not screaming for no reason. I feel like something really bad happened. I don't know. Okay, this next story says, I think I'm followed by ghosts. Hi Courtney, I'm Alex from the UK, and I've been watching your videos for 7 years or so. That's just insane. For a bit of context, I've lived in quite a few houses, so I have a lot of stories. Another thing to note is that my mother and grandmother are both mediums. My mom doesn't fuck with it and has learned to shut it out. My nan would mess with it and dabbled in it, as well as some negative stuff. I have loads of stories from my mom's childhood if you would want to know those. Yes! Also stories from when I lived at my nan's for a few months. Please. This is a long one, so strap in. It's not that long. My first one is from my first home. I'd lived in it since I was born, but the worst was when I was 8. My little brother's baby toys would go off out of nowhere, and a few times my feet were grabbed or touched. But when I was 11, I mainly had loft or bunk beds, and a loft bed is basically a high bed with a desk under it. I used to have a black figure that would stand in the corner of my room. It reached floor to ceiling. My room was like 8 feet tall too. And my dumb brain named him Jax. I don't know why I did. I was a weird kid. He would follow me a lot of the time when I was younger, and when I became a teen, I was friends with a girl who also saw him. And I think it angered him because not even a month later, we weren't friends. This happened twice. Shortly after, I permanently moved to my mother's house. The house my mother and her boyfriend at the time lived in used to belong to a woman who had died in it, specifically the room me and my stepsister at the time slept in. It's important to know I slept on the bottom bunk of our bunk bed. The room always made me feel uneasy, and I refused to be in it alone. Anyways, I struggled to sleep without noise going, and I woke up in the middle of the night often because my music would keep stopping. However, one night when I woke up, I was on my back. I never slept on my back, I'm a side sleeper, and there was a white face right in front of mine. No body to the side. Literally, it was just like a head above me hovering. I closed my eyes and willed myself to sleep. How? Let's just say my mom had to perform a cleansing ritual in there for me to sleep again. However, that house was never a comfortable place. I used to always be the first person home after school, and things in the kitchen would fall over. I had a ceramic dish dropped on me, and I was covered in cuts and banging from my brother's closet when I was home alone. The next house I lived in was an old chapel that a woman who I had known personally had died in years prior. That house, my doors would open or random stuff would go missing, but it was never a heavy presence. It was probably the lightest one I lived in. Now, the house I currently live in is a different story. I can't remember if it's a 1400 or 1500s house, but let's just say it's old. It was originally a stagecoach house that was linked to 2 houses on either side. Weird things have happened since living here, like the front door flying open. It's a hard door for even me to open. I've heard running on the landing, footsteps around our beds at night, and when I moved here, I saw Jax again in the corner of my room. This time, my lifelong best friend had seen him when there was just the 2 of us home alone. We still somehow managed to sleep in my room that night after having a few drinks. I haven't seen him since that, and that was about 7 or 8 months ago, but I'll update if anything else happens. Then there's an edit that says, this happened last night, March 20th. So, our house currently is rented. We have an inspection due, so my mom was getting a bit antsy because I was focused more on my essay for uni than cleaning. It was due the 21st. It was around 11 p.m. when I was on a call with my girlfriend. and there was running upstairs across the hallway and down the stairs. My door is at the bottom of the stairs. Both my brothers were asleep, so I brushed it off as my dog. Turns out my dog was in the kitchen with the gate locked, and my mom was in the living room. I'm currently home alone now as my brothers are at school and my mom's at work, but nothing's happening right now. Yeah, you would never catch me dead alone in the house. I'm so sorry. And this was 25 days ago. Do you still live there? I'm assuming you do, because what the fuck? You would not have moved in 25 days. Anything else happen? Any updates? This is the last story I'm gonna read. It says, some spooks from my childhood and some creeps from my early teens. Kind of love the name of that. Hi, I thought it was about time I share my stories. I will say I definitely didn't experience anything crazy, and my experience from my early teens very much could have been delusions, as I was having bad mental health issues at the time, but let's continue. First, I'll start in my childhood, where the most memorable experience was when I was around 7 and my mom's uncle recently passed. I woke up early, but the sun was definitely out. I slept in a loft bed, and in front of me appeared to be a black figure facing the window, which would be facing the side at my point of view. For some reason, I thought it was my mom's uncle, so I whispered his name and the figure turned to me really quickly. I hid under my covers until I fell back asleep. We moved on from that really fast, but this is like a small collection of stories. A toy car turning on, family computer turning on in the middle of the night and started playing a kid's show, and a bottle of shampoo flying off of its shelf early in the morning. Classic was experiencing the man in the top hat. I was 11, and nightly I would wake up and see a very tall man in a top hat standing half in my doorway and half in my parents', since our rooms were right next to each other. Nothing would happen besides him standing there, and I'm pretty sure I threw a pillow at him once after I forced myself to move. That's hilarious. Finally, my early teens. As I said, this is most likely delusions, as I was having mental health issues, but creepy nonetheless. Just basic shadow creatures I would see from the corner of my eye. At this point, we had moved houses and I was in a new room. From my room, there's a hallway to the front door, which is next to my room, entry into the living room, and the entry to the hallway to the rest of the house. The figures would always pass really quickly from the living room to the other hallway rather than come my way, thank God. They would look like they were just floating really fast, but they would eventually start showing up with red eyes and eventually learn how to crawl, still across the living room to the other hallway. The most creepy, I would say, with shadow figures was when I would be laying in bed with the door closed and a figure would appear from my door at the corner of my eye and slowly phase in and out towards my bed and would only disappear if I looked at it. Okay, Slenderman or Enderman from fucking Minecraft? I felt daring and decided to see how close it would come to me, but chickened out after it was one more step away from my bed. That's it for me. Also, my boyfriend had to deal with this weird creature that may have been a flesh stealer or something of that sort. A what? I might make a Let's Not Meet post after this one, or wait and see if Courtney reads my story and would like to hear, because my boyfriend only didn't hear but saw the thing as well. And it may have come to live with me after my boyfriend moved. Happy reading. Yeah, I desperately need to know what you're talking about. Okay, phone. Shut up. Yeah, I like desperately need to know what you're talking about. Please submit that stat. Okay, well, that's all I have for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I need every single one of you to send me your other stories, like, right now. And if you guys have any stories you want to share with me or the community, I'll have my subreddit linked down below. No rambling at the end of this, because I actually am going to film a rambly video that's probably going up before this video even goes up, so yeah. I'm gonna go. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!